What would you call a father who marries off his daughter again and again, not for her happiness, but only for his own power? A ruthless manipulator? A desperate politician? Or simply a monster in disguise of a father? Tonight we open the forbidden pages of history and step into the scandalous world of the Borgia family, a dynasty so powerful, so infamous that their name became a symbol of corruption, lust, and betrayal. And at the centre of this tangled web was Lucrezia Borgia, a young woman whose wedding night became one of the most whispered scandals of the Renaissance. The story begins in the late 15th century, a time when Italy was not one united country, but a mosaic of rival city-states. Florence, Venice, Milan, and Rome, each was a stage where politics, art, religion, and intrigue collided. The Renaissance is often remembered for Michelangelo's brushstrokes, Leonardo's inventions, and the rebirth of human knowledge. But beneath the marble statues and painted ceilings was a darker reality. Ambition, greed, and power games played at the highest level. And nowhere was this more visible than inside the very heart of Christendom, the Vatican. Rodrigo Borgia, a Spanish-born cleric, climbed the ranks of the Catholic Church with ruthless determination. In 1492 he achieved the unimaginable. He became Pope Alexander VI. But unlike other popes who pretended to embody holiness, Rodrigo ruled like a king. He treated the papacy not as a spiritual calling, but as a throne to be inherited, defended, and exploited. His enemies accused him of bribery, nepotism, and even heresy. But Rodrigo had one advantage: he was willing to do anything. He filled the Vatican with allies, rewarded loyal families, and most importantly, he placed his children at the very centre of his empire. Among those children was Lucrezia Borgia, born in 1480. Unlike her infamous brother Cesare, who carved his way through Italy with blood and steel, Lucrezia's role was different. She was the key to alliances, the pawn on the chessboard of power. From a young age, Lucrezia was groomed not for love but for politics. Her education was refined: Latin, poetry, etiquette, and theology. But beneath the surface, everyone knew her destiny. She would marry not for herself but for her father's ambition. By the age of 13, she was already engaged. By 15, she had been promised, withdrawn, and re-promised multiple times. To Rodrigo, she was a bargaining chip. To Lucrezia, it was a gilded prison. But one marriage, one night, would define her legacy more than any other. A wedding so lavish, so scandalous, that centuries later, historians still whisper about what truly happened behind those heavy doors. The whispers said it was not a night of love, but of power. Not a private union, but a public performance. A wedding night where Lucrezia's innocence was overshadowed by politics, and where rumours of what transpired would never die. By the late 1490s, Pope Alexander VI had many enemies. The Borgia name, though feared, was also loathed. To strengthen his grip, Rodrigo needed allies, families wealthy enough to provide gold, soldiers, and influence. And what was the easiest way to bind such alliances? Marriage. For Rodrigo, his daughter Lucrezia was not simply a child, she was a contract, a promise written in flesh and blood. Each marriage she entered, each vow she took, was another chain tying Italy's noble families to the Borgia cause. When Lucrezia's wedding to Alfonso of Aragon was arranged, it wasn't about romance. Alfonso's family offered military strength, prestige, and connections to the royal house of Naples. For the Pope, it was a victory. For Lucrezia, it was destiny repeating itself. The night of the wedding was a spectacle that Rome had rarely seen. The Vatican's grand halls were transformed into a glittering stage. Candles flickered against golden walls, music echoed through marble chambers, and tables overflowed with roasted meats, exotic fruits, and wines poured from silver cups. Nobles from every corner of Italy attended. Cardinals in crimson robes mingled with mercenaries in polished armor. Poets, musicians, and courtesans moved among the guests, whispering tales and spreading rumors with every stolen glance. The air smelled of perfume, smoke, and ambition. This was not just a wedding, it was a declaration of power. Lucrezia, draped in silk and jewels, appeared the perfect bride, but behind her golden hair and graceful smile was a young woman who had already been used, discarded, and reshaped by politics more times than most could endure. Beside her stood Alfonso, handsome, youthful, and eager to prove himself. To the guests, they looked like a vision of unity. But to those who knew the Borgias, appearances were never the whole story. As the night unfolded, the celebration grew wilder. Songs of devotion turned to drunken laughter, dancers whirled through the halls, and whispers thickened like smoke. Everyone knew what was supposed to happen next. After the feast, the couple would be led to their chamber, a ritual as old as marriage itself. But this was no ordinary family. The Borgias never followed tradition. They bent it, broke it, and twisted it into a spectacle. And what happened after those doors closed would shock Rome for centuries. As the final song faded and the last goblet was raised, the time came for the ancient ritual, the leading of the bride and groom to their chamber. Guests laughed, clapped, and whispered as Lucrezia and Alfonso were escorted away. For most couples, this moment would have been private, sacred, a beginning of intimacy. But in the court of the Borgias, even love was politics. The doors closed, the music dulled, and outside, 100 imaginations ran wild. What truly happened that night has been debated for over 5 centuries. Some chronicles, written by the Borgias' bitter enemies, claimed the wedding night was not an intimate union but a public spectacle. According to them, Lucrezia and Alfonso's marriage was consummated not once, not twice, but 3 times in a single night. 3 times as if the act itself was not about love but about performance. 3 times as if the couple had to prove not only their unity but their vitality before the watching world. 3 times to brand the Borgia name with scandal so unforgettable that it still lingers today. One version of the tale suggests that members of the court were present, curious nobles, cardinals and servants who watched, gossiped and later spread the rumour like wildfire. Another version claims the couple was alone, but spies, eager for secrets, fabricated the tale and exaggerated it until it became legend. Which story was true? No one knows. What we do know is that the rumour spread quickly, faster than any truth could defend it. To some, the scandal symbolised fertility and strength, a sign that Lucrezia and Alfonso's union would bear heirs and secure the Borgia legacy. To others, it was proof of decadence and corruption, that the Borgias had turned even marriage into theatre, stripping away modesty and turning intimacy into spectacle. For centuries, this single night became a weapon. Enemies of the Borgias' wit elded it as evidence of sin. Supporters quietly dismissed it as slander. But for Lucrezia herself, it was another chapter in a life where her body was treated as a stage for other people's ambitions. Did it really happen? Or was it a rumour crafted by jealous rivals who sought to tarnish the Borgia name? The Renaissance was an age of both brilliance and poison. Political enemies did not fight with swords alone, they fought with whispers, and no whisper was deadlier than scandal. Whether true or false, the story of that wedding night clung to Lucrezia like a shadow she could never escape. By dawn, the feasting had ended, the music silenced, and the halls cleared. Yet outside the Vatican, the whispers had only begun. What happened in that chamber would ripple far beyond the marriage bed. Servants carried tales, courtiers embroidered details, rivals sharpened rumours into daggers, and soon the streets of Rome buzzed with scandal. The Borgia wedding night became less of an event and more of a legend. The Borgias had countless enemies, families who despised their rise, priests who resented their corruption, and rulers who feared their growing influence. For these enemies, the scandal was a gift. "Did you hear what happened?" they whispered in courts. 3 times. Can you imagine? The more outrageous the tale, the faster it spread, and in an age when reputation meant everything, rumour was as deadly as poison. But what of Lucrezia herself? Was she the orchestrator of scandal, willingly embracing the theatre of power? Or was she the silent victim, used again and again as her father's tool? Some historians argue she was complicit, that she enjoyed the attention, that she leaned into the role carved for her. Others see her as a prisoner in silks, trapped between a father's ambition and a brother's violence. Whatever the truth, her reputation was never her own. Every step she took, every vow she made, was already written for her in a script authored by men. The Borgia name itself became almost mythological, synonymous with corruption, sin, and decadence. Poisonings, betrayals, and affairs clung to them like shadows. Lucrezia's scandalous wedding night was just one thread in a tapestry of infamy, but it was a thread that refused to fade. For centuries, poets, playwrights, and novelists returned to the story, reshaping it, retelling it, exaggerating it until it no longer mattered whether it had ever been true. The legend had become more powerful than reality. Then today, when we hear the name Borgia, we do not think of art or diplomacy. We think of whispered scandals, dark corridors, and sins committed in candlelight. And at the heart of that image stands Lucrezia, forever remembered not as a mother, not as a ruler, not even as a woman of her own will, but as a bride whose wedding night became history's most scandalous rumour. History is never neutral. It is written by winners, twisted by enemies, and embroidered by gossipers. The truth of Lucrezia Borgia's scandalous wedding night may never be known. Maybe it was propaganda, an invention by those who despised the Borgias' meteoric rise. Maybe it was real, a grotesque performance staged by a family who turned everything, even intimacy, into politics. But whichever it was, the legend survived, and in surviving it shaped the way we remember her. So who was Lucrezia? A pawn sacrificed by her father, bartered from husband to husband? Or a cunning player who learned to survive in a world built against her and even to bend it to her will? The answer may lie somewhere in between. Perhaps she was both, victim and survivor, manipulated yet complicit, trapped yet resilient. 500 years later, her name still ignites debate. Lucrezia Borgia, saint or sinner, victim or villain. But maybe the scandal says less about her and more about us, about how societies love to gossip about women, to reduce their worth to rumours, to make their private lives into public judgment. So I leave you with this question. If your father used your life, your future, and even your wedding night as bargaining chips for his ambition, would you be remembered as guilty or as a victim of power you never chose? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Because the story of Lucrezia Borgia is not just a tale of Renaissance Rome, it is a mirror showing us how far humanity will go for power, and how easily reputations can be destroyed forever.